thing that we find interesting about slavery when we study it is it was different in the United States than it had been in the past. And many people say that's why slavery eventually ended, right? So in ancient Roman times, you know people had slaves, you read about that, right? Egyptians had slaves, everybody did. But back then, slavery happened because two different sides would battle in some war, and the dudes who lost had to be the slaves of the people who won. So that's a little bit like during the Superbowl, if the team that lost then had to go and make breakfast for the dudes who won for the rest of their life. Alright? That was because that was how it was done. And that made it different in the ancient world because slaves were understood to be intelligent people who had skills. You could have your slave teach your child to play chess, or to read, or to write poetry. Right? But when we move over to the new world of what will become the United States, we change the rule. And it becomes, you know what, we're only going to go to this one other part of the world, and all the people there we're going to assume are needing to be slaves. And we're going to ship them over here, and suddenly we're not going to qualify them as people anymore. They're going to be property and legal papers, so they don't even have status as human beings. And when you do that to somebody, you start to believe clearly they can't be as good as you. No more are they someone that I've met in combat and might have beaten me. They're just somebody who's intended to help me all the rest of my life. And that destroys our respect for other people, right? And so that's called chattel slavery. And that's what was practiced in the United States. And that was practiced by the family that's in this book, right? So they are property in this man's world. And that's why when they travel, and he's made this deal, which is kind of interesting, why he would make this deal in the first place, but when he gets to the other side, he wants to be a good guy, which is really hard to do when you're already a slave owner. How are you also a good guy? But nobody thinks they're a bad guy, right? Nobody thinks they're the bad guy.
They're doing what's appropriate for the time.
Exactly. They're living up to everybody else's things. So he thinks he has to keep his word, so he frees. That's why he frees the parents. But it's like, I never mentioned your children, so I'm okay. I haven't broken my promise, have I? Right? So that's the interesting complexity we thought when we first started the story.